The Maelstrom Hunter by Crimson QB Sage, Chapter 14, Black and White. Unknown location. Itachi and Kisame walked into the abandoned warehouse, the sound of their footsteps echoing around the building. The duo was oddly quiet as they continued their trek through the abandoned structure. Finally stopping in the center, a small flickering light hung overhead. Looking in front of them, a pair of purple-gray eyes with four concentric rings was seen visibly through the shroud of darkness. Leader-sama, Itachi spoke no louder than a whisper. His face kept its stoic expression, but internally he was surprised. What brings you here? Once information that the Yonbi, Gobai, and Nanabi containers were here alongside the QB container became known, I felt the need to complete this task myself. Payne stated, while his statement was partially true, that was not his true motive for being in Remnant. And what of us, Leader-sama? Kisame asked. You two are being tasked with hunting the Hachibi container for the time being, Pain commanded. Itachi and Kisame nodded their heads. Hi, Leader-sama, the duo replied. Dismissed, Pain said. Itachi and Kisame began walking away after they were given the consent to. Itachi, a word with you, Pain stated. Said stoic Uchiha stopped in his tracks as Kisame continued walking away. As soon as Kisame was out of his listening distance, Pain spoke again. What's the Kyubiching jerky like? Itachi stood silent for a moment, formulating the words in his head that would best describe the blonde fox. He'll be the first one to yell and scream at you, Itachi vaguely stated. Also, about your condition, Pain said. Setsu was about to find out that your brother and his teammate were last seen boarding a boat to Remnant. Itachi said nothing as he began walking away. Downtown Vale. So you want to know more about me? Blake stated. Finally, she speaks. Nearly 2 days and you gave me nothing but small talk and weird looks, Sun exclaimed, Blake giving the monkey faunus a firm look. Yeah, like that, he said. Blake rolled her eyes before closing them and looking at him sadly. Sun, are you familiar with the White Fang? Blake asked. Of course, I don't think there's a faunus on the planet who hasn't heard of them. Stupid holier than thou creeps that use force to get whatever they want. Bunch of freaks, if you ask me, Sun said. Blake took a sip of her drink. I was once a member of the White Fang, Blake stated, causing Sun to go cross-eyed and choke on his drink. The monkey faunus placed his drink down and wiped his mouth as he held up his hands to process this information. Wait a minute, you were a member of the White Fang? Sun questioned. That's right, I was a member for most of my life, actually. You could almost say I was born into it, Blake said. Flashback start. The scene shifted to reveal the silhouette of fallen weapons plunged into the ground. Swords, guns, knives, spears, any number of weapons lay scattered. Back then, things were different. In the ashes of war, the White Fang was meant to be a symbol of peace and unity between humans and the faunus, Blake stated. A new image replaced the previous scene, showing the outlines of two trios. On one side was people with the outlines of animalistic features such as tails and ears. These were the faunus. Opposite them, the outlines of regular people with no animal-like traits were present. These were the humans. One person from each side was shaking hands with the other as a sign of peace. The image changed once again to reveal a white faunus cowering in fear of gray and black aggressors harassing the hybrid. Later, more faunus were seen pushing the crowd away from their bullied brethren. Of course, despite being promised equality, the faunus were subjugated to discrimination and hate. Humanity still thought of us as lesser beings, and so the White Fang rose up as the voice of our people. And I was there, Blake continued. The silhouette of faunus protecting appeared. Emerging from the shadows was a young girl with dark hair and cat ears. I was at the front of every rally. I took part in every boycott. I actually thought we were making a difference, but I was just a youthful optimist, Blake commented. Cutting from a child version of Blake, the blue flag of a white wolf with sad eyes and a circle behind its head is lowered. In its place, a flag with the image of a red monster with 3 bloody scratches and the teeth bared at the world appeared. Then, 5 years ago, our leader stepped down and a new one took his place. A new leader with a new way of thinking, Blake said. A quick series of images are shown. Faunus replacing their picket signs with axes and blades, windows being broken, thieves leaping on trains to steal their cargo. Suddenly, our peaceful protests were being replaced with organized attacks. We were setting fire to shops that refused to serve us, hijacking cargo from companies that used faunus labor, and the worst part was, it was working. We were being treated like equals, but not out of respect. Out of fear, Blake stated, an image of three faunus individuals standing in a dominating manner with malicious grins. Flashback end. Blake placed her teacup down in front of a stunned son. So I left. I decided no longer wanted to use my skills to aid in their violence, and instead I would dedicate my life to becoming a huntress. So here I am, a criminal hiding in plain view, all with the help of a little black bow, Blake said, wiggling her cat ears beneath the fashionable disguise to demonstrate. So, have you told your friend any of this? Son asked, coming to terms with what was said. Blake said nothing as she merely looked down in shame. With Team Archfiend, so what has happened in my absence? Naruto asked as he walked down the streets of Vale with the rest of his team. Well, a bit after you left with the toads, we came across some Konoha shinobi, Fu replied, causing Naruto to stop dead in his tracks. Konoha shinobi? Naruto questioned. Yeah, they seem to be looking for you, Han stated. Did you happen to know them? Roshi asked. Depends. What did some of them look like? Naruto asked. Well, there was this guy with red vertical markings on his face. He was probably in Inusaka considering he was seen with a giant white dog, Roshi said. Kiba and Akaramu, Naruto murmured. A guy and a girl that both had long hair and these white eyes, Roshi added, listing them off on his fingers. Neji and Hinata, a chick with two buns in her hair and a lot of weapons, Roshi stated. Tenten, a guy in a hood with black glasses and had a lot of bugs, Han said. Shino, a really, really weird guy that wore all green and had a bowl haircut, Fu added. Lee, Naruto deadpanned. Even after all this time, Lee was still Lee. A girl with blonde hair that covered one of her eyes, Han stated. Ino, and a lazy-looking guy with a pineapple hair, Fu said. Shikamaru, a fat guy with red armor and brown hair, Choji, Naruto mumbled, and don't call him fat. And then there was this creepy pale-skinned looking guy and a brown-haired guy with a weird ability to control wood, Roshi finished. Now those two, I don't know, but that last one sounds like a Mokuton user, Naruto said. Blake, a shout was heard. What was that? Roshi asked. That voice sounds very familiar, Naruto mumbled. And very close, Han added, with Team Ruby minus Blake. Blake! Yang called out, her little sister having done the same seconds ago. Currently, the trio of Ruby, Weiss, and Yang were walking down the streets of Vale, calling out in vain for their missing teammate. Blake! Where are you? Ruby called out. Blake! Yang called out again. Weiss, you're not helping, Ruby said, turning to her white-haired teammate. Oh, you know what might be able to help? The police, Weiss said. Weiss, Ruby said, crossing her arms in irritation. It was just an idea, Weiss defended. Yeah, a bad one, Ruby said while walking down the sidewalk. Ruby? A new voice questioned, looking to the left. The trio saw the approaching forms of Team Archfiend. Naruto, Ruby exclaimed, rushing to the blonde leader of Team Archfiend and enveloping him in a taco hug that sent the two spiraling down to the ground. Naruto and Ruby stayed that way for a good minute as Ruby gave Naruto chaste kisses. When did you get back? She asked. A few days ago. I was just about to go try and find you as well, Naruto said, a small fox-like grin on his face as they got up from the ground. What brings you guys out here anyways? Han asked. Blake turned out to be a faunist and ran away, Yang answered, expecting collective gasps from the four only to find none. I kinda knew it beforehand, Roshi stated. I mean, honestly, who didn't see this coming? Han said. Ruby, Weiss, and Yang raised their hands. We were trying to find her before we ran into you guys, Yang said, causing Weiss to scoff. Weiss, I think we should hear her side of the story before we jump to any conclusions. I think that when we hear it, you'll all realize I was right, Weiss said, and I think Weiss's hair looks wonderful today. A new voice exclaimed. Turning around, the group saw Penny standing behind them. Penny, where did you come from? Ruby exclaimed in surprise. Hey guys, what are you up to? Penny cheerfully asked, ignoring Ruby's question. Ruby said, we're looking for our friend Blake. Yang answered, oh, you mean the faunus girl? Penny said, causing the three members of Team Ruby to stare at her. Wait, how did you know that? Ruby asked. The cat ears, Penny said, pointing to her head. Yang laughed a little. What cat ears? She wears a bow, Yang said in realization. Silence loomed in the area as a tumbleweed was blown through in the wind. She does like tuna a lot, Ruby whispered. So where is she? Penny asked. We don't know. She's been missing since Friday, Ruby replied. That's terrible, Penny gasped, approaching an uncomfortable Ruby. Well, don't you worry, Ruby, my friend. I won't rest until we find your teammate. That's really nice of you, Penny, but we're okay, really? Right, guys? Ruby asked, doing her best to continue smiling. She looked over Penny to direct her question at Yang and Weiss, only to find two comical blinking outlines of where her teammates were. Naruto, Han, Roshi, and Fu could only watch in silence as another tumbleweed blew past them. It sure is windy today, Penny exclaimed. Where did the tumbleweed come from? Naruto asked. With Blake and Sun. So what's the plan now? Sun asked as he placed his hands behind his head. Currently, Sun and Blake were walking down an alley as they planned their next course of actions. I still don't believe the White Fang is behind these robberies. They've never needed this much dust before, Blake contemplated. What did they do? What if they did? Sun questioned, his eye widening. He lowered his arms and paced in front of Blake as he continued speaking. I mean, the only way to prove that they didn't do it is to go to the place where they would most likely go to if they were to do it and not find them there, right? The only thing is, I have no idea where that would be, Blake said. Well, while I was on the ship, I heard some guys talking about offloading a huge shipment of dust coming in from Atlas, Sun stated. How huge? Blake asked. Huge. Big Schnee Company freighter, Sun said. You sure? Blake questioned. With Weiss and Yang. Thanks anyways, Yang yelled as she came out of a shop with Weiss, waving to the person inside. This is hopeless, she sighed, looking at Weiss as she looked around nonchalantly. You really don't care if we find her, do you? Don't be stupid. Of course I do. I'm just afraid of what she'll say when we find her, Weiss replied, walking forward as she called over her shoulder. The innocent never run, Yang, she exclaimed, causing Yang to look down in thought. With Ruby and Penny. So Blake is your friend? Penny asked, causing Ruby to sigh as the group made their way down the sidewalk. Yes, Penny, Ruby replied. But you're mad at her? Penny questioned. Yes. Well, I'm not. Weiss is, Ruby said. Is she friends with Blake? Penny asked. Well, that's kind of up in the air right now, Ruby stated. But why? Penny asked, trying to contemplate what was said, causing Ruby to sigh again. Well, you see, Blake might not be who we thought she was, Ruby said, causing Penny to gasp. Is she a man? Penny asked. No, Penny, she's, Ruby said, but stopped herself and sighed. She looked at Penny. I don't know what she is. She didn't exactly talk to us before she decided to run off. I don't have a lot of friends, but if I did, I would want them to talk to me about things, Penny said, Ruby turning her gaze downward sadly. Me too, Ruby said as they continued walking. With Team Archfiend. Any of you guys know tracking jutsu? Naruto asked as he crouched near the ground. No, I don't think any of us know any sensor jutsu either, Roshi said. The last part got Naruto in deep thought as suddenly a comical light bulb appeared above his head. I think I got an idea, Naruto said as he tried to stand up, only for the light bulb above his head to shatter as shrapnel covered his face. Got glass in my face. With Blake and Sun, 5 hours later, amidst the chirping of crickets and darkness of night, Blake was laying flat on her stomach on a rooftop overlooking the shipment of Schnee dust containers. Did I miss anything? Sun asked, dropping down to the right of Blake. Not really. They've offloaded the crates from the boat. Now they're just sitting there. Cool, Sun said, holding out one of the green apples in his arms. I stole you some food. Do you always break the law without giving a second thought? Blake asked, giving Sun a questioning look. Hey, aren't you in a cult or something? Sun countered, Blake delivering an angry glare at him. Okay. Too soon. Suddenly, the sound of 4 pairs of feet 4 feet landing behind the duel was heard. Turning around, Blake and Sun prepared their weapons to strike, but hesitated when seeing who it was. Standing behind them was the 4 members of Team Archfiend. Orange pigment seemed to be around Naruto's eyes, but other than that, not much had changed about the team. So this is where you were hiding, Roshi said. What are you guys doing here? Blake asked. We were helping the rest of your team search for you, Roshi replied. The real question is, what are you doing here? Before Blake could reply, the wind began to blow all around them. Looking up, the group saw a bulkhead's searchlights flashing around for a landing spot. The ship descending in the middle of the cargo containers, and a ramp extended for a black hooded individual with a metallic fanged mask to come out of. Oh no, Blake said as she watched the new people arrive. Is that them? Sun asked. Yes, it's them, Blake said, staring at the bloody wolf on the back of the man's outfit. The White Fang? Naruto questioned him. All right, grab the tow cables, one of the White Fang soldiers ordered, motioning with his rifle to the other White Fang members coming from the aircraft. You really didn't think they were behind it, did you? Sun asked. No, I think deep down I knew. I just didn't want to be right, Blake said, staring sadly at the scene. Who are you again? Naruto asked. The name Sun Wukong, Sun said, extending his hand to the blonde fox faunus. Naruto Uzumaki, nice to meet you, Naruto said, shaking Sun's hand. Blake had closed her eyes in despair, only to open them suddenly as a new voice had heard. Hey, what's the holdup? Looking at the source of the new voice, the group saw the infamous Roman Torchwork walking around. We're not exactly the most inconspicuous bunch of thieves at the moment, so why don't you animals try to pick up the pace? This isn't right. The White Fang would never work with a human, especially not one like that, Blake said, standing up and unsheathing the katana of Gamble Shroud before walking off the edge of the roof. Hey, what are you doing? Sun said. Don't worry, I'm sure she knows what she's doing, Naruto said. The blonde leader of Team Archfiend looked to his teammates and nodded his head. Roshihan and Fu nodded back and leapt off into the shadows. Meanwhile, with Blake, said girl fell to the ground in a crouch and proceeded to hide behind one of the containers, peeking around the corner to see Roman berate a White Fang member holding a coil of rope. No, you idiot. This isn't a leash, Roman said as he looked around. Blake suddenly appeared behind him with her blade at his throat. What the oh for he exclaimed, rolling his eyes when he was caught off by Blake mid-swear. Nobody move, Blake yelled. The White Fang soldiers readied their guns and equipped their swords in response. Whoa, take it easy there, little lady, Roman said as the White Fang closed in on her. Blake used her free hand to go for her bow and remove it, causing the ribbon to fall away as her fawness ears were shown to the world. Brothers of the White Fang, why are you aiding this scum? Blake questioned. The White Fang members lowered their weapons a little at this development, unsure of what to do, when Roman began to laugh. Oh, kid, didn't you get the memo? Roman said. What are you talking about? Blake asked. The White Fang and I are going in on a joint business venture together, Roman exclaimed. Tell me what it is, or I'll put an end to your little operation, Blake commanded. Suddenly the air was filled with more turbulence, blowing the wind wildly around the holdup. I wouldn't exactly call it a little operation, Roman said as he looked up. Looking up as well, Blake watched in horror as two more bullheads hovered above the heist. Roman smiled and managed to fire his cane at Blake's feet, resulting in a large explosion. With Penny and Ruby. As Penny and Ruby continued their search for Blake, an explosion was heard, causing the duo to turn around and see smoke rising from the docking bay just a few buildings away. Oh no, Ruby said as she rushed to the source of the explosion with Blake and Sun. Blake, dazed but relatively unhurt on the ground, quickly rolled and ran out of the way of Roman's continued attacks, flaming missiles destroying cargo behind her as she retreated behind more containers. Here, kitty, 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 Roman taunted as he approached the container slowly. His taunt was interrupted when a banana peel landed on his head, causing him to look up and growl at the assailant. Sun leapt from the container above Roman and dropped down on the criminal's feet first, rolling up and readying himself to fight. Leave her alone, Sun exclaimed. The bulkhead above opened up to let more White Fang members descend on the scene, standing by Roman as he got up and surrounded Sun. You're not the brightest banana in the bunch, are you, kid? Roman questioned. With that said, the White Fang members charged at Sun, but he managed to dodge slash meant for him and got some of the soldiers with his fist and kicks until he rolled out of the way as he pulled out a collapsible red staff. Four shadows blurred past him and began assaulting the White Fang members. Looking closer at the floor blurs, Sun and Blake saw Roshi, Han, Fu, and Naruto attacking. Roshi had his twin revolver knives out. Han was knocking soldiers down with his war axe shotgun. Fu was striking people down left and right with her Tonfa machine guns, and Naruto was hacking and slashing with his Kubikari Bocho. Sun jumped into the fray and began to beat down nearby opponents with his staff. Blake peered around the corner of the containers to watch Sun and Team Archfiend jump around and beat more White Fang soldiers, causing one to fly over Roman's head. The crime boss growled in annoyance and aimed his cane at the group. The shot was deflected by Sun when suddenly Blake leapt into the action. He's mine, Blake exclaimed, lunging at Roman. She went in close and became a blur of after images as she slashed both blades at Roman, who backed away and deflected each would-be a blow with his cane at unbelievable speeds. Blake continued to dash, hop over, and slide around Roman to try and find a weak spot, but her enemy, while barely deflecting the attacks, lands a few hits on Blake until one final beating with his cane caused her to go down. Just as Roman dealt with one opponent, the crime boss had to duck under a swipe from a massive blade by Naruto, swinging his cane down at the blonde fox. Naruto pulled out his Tonto and blocked the incoming attack. Never thought I'd see your face again, Blondie, Roman growled. Right back at ya, Flanky. Naruto grinned, causing Roman's eyes to twitch in annoyance at the nickname. After jumping back to avoid the blonde's giant blade, Roman was once again assaulted as Sun appeared right in front of him and disconnected his staff in two spinning circles of flame-firing shotgun nunchucks. Sun swung each gun at Roman while firing everything he had at him, but even with the rapid series of shots and flying bullets, Roman managed to defend himself against every bullet and hit until a millisecond-long pause allowed Blake to get a slash in and knock him back. On his back, Roman noticed the container hanging by a crane right above the three warriors and got up to fire his cane at the trio. With the three momentarily distracted, Roman fired another shot from his cane at the supports to the container. Naruto deflected the projectile coming at him and was unable to reach the second shot in time. Blake leapt behind it, but Sun barely missed when he jumped forward, ending up with the nozzle of Roman's cane. Just as Roman was about to fire, his and Sun's attention was drawn to a familiar voice. Hey! Ruby exclaimed, appearing on the rooftop overlooking them, crescent rows extended and ready for action. Well, hello, Red. Isn't it past your bedtime? Roman mocked, losing his interest in Sun as he waved at Ruby. Ruby, are these people your friends? Penny asked as she approached Ruby. Penny, get back! Ruby exclaimed, looking behind her while her attention was diverted. Roman snarled and fired his cane at her, launching the young huntress in training back from the explosion force and sending her scythe flying away. Ah! Ruby! Naruto exclaimed as he rushed over to help upset girl. Roman gave off a professional-level evil laugh at his attack on the young girl. Penny turned her head towards the criminal and gave her first glare, walking forward while Ruby tried to get back up with the help of Naruto, her arm over his shoulder in support. Penny, wait! Stop! Ruby yelled, raising her hand in a futile attempt to stop Penny. Don't worry, Ruby. I'm combat ready, Penny exclaimed. Her backpack mechanically opened up, and from its dark depths came a single sword that extended and multiplied into several blades, hovering over Penny's back. Leaping from the rooftop with the weapons acting as wings, Penny sent three of her swords to knock two White Fang soldiers down before even landing on the ground, where she proceeded to fling the swords at one enemy, impaling another to a wall, creating a barrier of spinning steel against the running attack, leaping over a goon with her swords in tow, and finally making a wheel that she threw to knock multiple faunus off their feet. Whoa, Sun exclaimed in amazement before running off to safety. How the heck is she doing that? Naruto thought. It looks like some sort of physical attack. Maybe she's manipulating the gravity around to her will, but that would take years to perfect, even levitating one object, let alone several. Kurama stated. 3 bullheads came from the skies and opened fire on the battle, but Penny merely formed a shield and launched 2 of her swords into the wall behind her, which in turn pulled their back with their strings. When her sword swirled around her again, Penny commanded them to open their points and build up a large glowing ball of green light. With a punching action, several bright lasers cracked the pavement when they fired at the transports and sliced each one in half, causing several of the White Fang members inside to fall and letting Ruby and Naruto watch as the bullheads fell in pieces behind her. Stunned, the duo turned back to Penny as she aimed her swords at the remaining bullheads holding the crate of dust and pulled back on their wires, tugging the aircrafts with them. Well, how's she doing that? Ruby asked. That right there is the million question, Naruto said. Seeing the bullheads of light fall under Penny's control, Roman grimaced and turned to run towards the last transport. Penny, after her large green pupils dilated for a second, pulled with all her might on the strings, and the aircraft crashed into a stack of crates, causing an explosion as a result. These kids just keep getting weirder, Roman muttered as he watched from the safety of his escape. With his observation made, he used his cane to close the doors, and the jet lifted off, flying away from the last battle. Later that day, a handful of police cars arrived at the docks, where the members of Team Marchfiend, Ruby, Blake, Sun, and Penny sat on top of the boxes in silence. That is, until Weiss and Yang appeared on the scene. Look, Weiss, it's not what you think, she exclaimed. The whole thing. See, she doesn't exactly have a bow. She had kitty ears, and they're actually kind of cute, Ruby said, quickly spoke, trying to explain the situation, only to be ignored by Weiss as the white-haired girl squared off with Blake. Weiss, I want you to know that I'm no longer associated with the White Fang. Back when I was with Blake started calmly calmly looking Weiss down. Stop. Do you have any idea how long we've been searching for you? Weiss asked, allowing a pause. 12 hours. That means I've had 12 hours to think about this, and in that 12 hours I've decided, she said. Yang, Ruby, Sun, and the members of Team Archfiend looked on in worry. I don't care. Weiss finished. You don't care? Blake questioned in surprise. You said you're not one of them anymore, right? Weiss asked. No, I haven't been since I was younger. Blake started, Weiss silencing her. Bah. I don't want to hear it. All I want to know is that the next time something this big comes up, you'll come to your teammates and not some, Weiss said, looking at Sun behind her as she caught herself. Someone else, of course, Blake said, wiping a tear from her eye, and nodded as she looked at Ruby and Yang grinning at her. Weiss smiled and nodded. The moment was serious for a moment more until Ruby screamed, Yeah, Team Ruby is back together, Ruby exclaimed, waving her arms wildly as confetti poured down and a comical hooray was heard. The four looked at Naruto as the blonde fox did his best to look innocent and not laugh. I'm still not quite sure about how I feel about you, Weiss said, pointing at Sun before pointing at Team Archfiend. Or you guys, meh, I can live with that, Naruto said as he shrugged his shoulders. Hey, wait a minute, where's Penny? Ruby asked, looking around for the overly cheerful girl. From the darkened back seat of a limo, Penny watched the group of friends reunited with each other. You should know better than to go running around in a strange city, a mysterious masculine voice said. I know, sir, Penny said, lowering her head sadly. Penny, your time will come, the mysterious man said as the car they were in drove off from the scene, Beacon Academy. Meanwhile, Osmond held a scroll showing a live feed of Team Ruby and Team Archfiend at the docks. He closes the video and opened up a communication with Crow. Other than his name, the rest of the information on Crow was missing or unknown. The only other writing was a message reading, Queen had pawns. Osmond mumbled. Unknown location. Roman walked into a large warehouse with a shadowy interior. He went over to a table and placed the case of mysterious contents, a sign in tiredness. How very disappointing, Roman-san, a mysterious deep voice said. Roman turned around suddenly as he looked in the direction of the source of the voice. Well, I wasn't expecting to see you guys so soon, Roman said. A mysterious black-haired woman with glowing yellow-orange eyes appeared next to the dark silhouette of a man. Behind them was two less shadowy figures of a purple-haired man and a mid-haired tanned woman. I was expecting more from you, the mysterious man said. Hey, you were the one who suggested working with those stupid mutts from the White Fang, Roman countered, causing the mysterious man to chuckle darkly. And you will continue to do so, the mysterious man said as he began to walk away. We have big plans for you, Roman. All we ask is a little cooperation. End of chapter 14.